Hey, Mike Conn here with Mike Conn Coaching and Consulting. We're so glad that you guys are with us today. One of our programs is called the People Lab. And at the People Lab, we solve the problem of division and disunity in the workplace. We do that by partnering with organizations to help move their team members to becoming teammates. And we do that by focusing on four key topics: communication and culture, execution and teamwork, leadership and supervision, and personal development and growth. Today's conversation is all about leadership and supervision. And as leaders, as supervisors, as bosses, as managers, there's a lot of things that we have responsibility for, that we have this great opportunity to lead. But there's a lot of questions that go in with that. Just because someone's good at doing doesn't mean they're good at leading. Just because someone's a high performer, a high producer, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate for them to be a great manager of people or a leader of people. So today's conversation, if you ever have been a leader or a manager or a supervisor, or if you have ever been led by a leader or a manager or a supervisor, I mean, this conversation is for you. And that's all of us, right? We've either been leading or we've been led by people. Hey, I've been on the right end of some great leadership. I've been led by some incredible leaders. I've also been led by a couple of folks that I'm like, okay, here's a list of things not to do. So we're going to be wise and not do that. I've actually, to be honest with you, there have been times when I've led in ways that I don't know that I would have followed if I would have been the one following Mike's leadership at that point in time. So the goal for us is to get better. We've got to be able to get better, and we can't get better until we focus on what we're talking about. You know, one of the great questions that people ask all the time as leaders is, who are you for? I mean, I think that's a great question. There's even a book right over here over my shoulder about it, how to be known by who you're for. And I think that's a fabulous question. I mean, for, to me, is one of the most powerful three-letter words in the English language. And it's one that most people are forfeiting. We're just laying it down. We're more known by what we're against than who we're for. But I think the question, who are you for? I think that's a good question. But I think there's a better question, especially for leaders and managers and supervisors. And that question is, who knows that you're for them? That's an entirely different question. The question, who are you for? It's all about my intent. But the question, who knows that you're for them? That's what have I communicated, both verbally and non-verbally, both in print and email and text and handbook and playbook and policies, procedures, all that stuff. But just because I aim communication at someone doesn't mean that communication really takes place. The question, who knows that you're for them? Man, that's a great question for leaders. And that's one that as a leader, I want everybody to know that I'm for them. Whenever I'm leading them, whether I'm leading a team of 6, 7, or 8, or if I'm in front of 1,000 middle schoolers at an assembly, or if I'm doing a keynote at a conference, I want people to know that I'm for them. If I'm in a one-on-one coaching conversation, whether it's virtual or in person, I want the person on the other end of my communication to know that I'm for them. And as a leader, I think that's one of the best things that we can do. It really goes back to Leadership 101. What gets rewarded gets repeated. One more time, Leadership 101. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And if I'm the leader who only acknowledges something when it's bad or when it's broken or when it's wrong, then that's what's going to get repeated. Not because people want to keep messing up, but because that's how they get my time. Now take this from the conference room, right? Take it at home to the living room. If I'm only, as a parent, if I'm only pointing out things that need to get better, what gets rewarded gets repeated. The thing that gets my time and my attention is what I'm going to see more of. Hey, that goes same with your spouse. Like nobody wants to only be nagged or be reminded of what's not going the way that I want it to go, in ways you didn't meet my preferences. No. Leadership is a different thing. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And that's a baseline fundamental of leadership. You know, every organization has a customer retention strategy. You know, a customer's always right mindset. It's hey, we got to keep the customer happy. Hey, it's even a mindset in some administrations and in schools where there's a conflict between the parent or the guardian and the teacher. The parent or guardian is always right, or at least the teacher is made to feel like the parent or guardian is always right. Now, it's not different in other workplaces than in the school. I mean, it's, you've heard a lot that the customer is always right, and there's some reasoning behind that. I mean, if the happy customer isn't happy, then they're going to take their business somewhere else to one of our competitors. If the happy customer has some other issues, they're going to, now more than ever, they'll go to Facebook or to other social media channels and have what I call social media courage. I mean, I call it that in public. That's not what I call it in private, but where you can say whatever you want, and there are essentially little to no ramifications for it. And people are quick to plead the First Amendment and you can't censor me and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's true. It is America, and you have the right to say whatever you want. Also, we have consequences for our actions. As leaders, as supervisors, man, that goes for us for sure. For everyone who we lead, we're not bossing them around. They've been entrusted to our care. That's a mindset shift. If we're just looking at people we can push around, or we can boss around, or we can give orders to, or we can say, hey, you need to do something while I'm drinking my coffee and looking busy, that's not leadership. That's bossership, and that's different, right? Today, we're talking about leadership and supervision and how to do that in a great way. How many organizations, we talked about people who have like a customer retention strategy, but how many organizations have a team member retention strategy? I mean, a lot of times as supervisors, we think, hey, we just need to give them a raise. As soon as we can give them a raise, we'll give them a raise. Hey, work as hard as you can. As soon as I can give you an extra raise, 50 cents an hour, $1 an hour, $2, $3, $4 an hour. As soon as I do that, I'll do that. And we think that's how we can take care of people. We think that's how we can keep people from going and seeing if the grass is really greener. But there are statistics that show, if you need it to be backed up by statistics, we got some stats for you here today. There are some stats that show that people really aren't just looking for more money. I also don't know a lot of people who turn down more money. I also myself don't always turn down more money. But the goal is not just to get them more money, as we're about to find out in some of these statistics. 72% of employees say employee recognition is the number one factor in engagement from employees or team members. Now, some people call them employees, some people call them team members. I'm in the team member camp. I said at the beginning, we partner with organizations to help move their team members to becoming teammates. And I absolutely want you to be engaged if you're one of the team members on our team. And the statistics on this survey say 72% of the people who were surveyed say employee recognition is the number one factor in their engagement, in team member engagement. 60% of employees say their managers don't provide frequent enough recognition. And 53% say their work is never recognized at all. Now, we're going to go back to the first stat, 72%. 72% say employee recognition is the number one factor in employee or team member engagement. Now, if that's true for your organization, when was the last time that you brought in front of the whole team, in front of the whole department, in front of the whole organization? When was the last time you invested time, not spent time, invested time in recognizing the team members for the job well done? Could be in one-on-one coaching, could be in feedback sessions, could be in customer service, however you do it. But when was the last time that you intentionally built that into the rhythm? When was the last time that you stood up in front of the group and you called someone's name in front of other people, recognizing them for something good? 60% of employees say their managers don't provide frequent enough recognition. Now, frequent enough based on whose standards? Well, that's one of the things that makes leadership and supervision tough, right? Because it's everyone's expectations. It doesn't matter if you're in a call center, or if you're in a restaurant, or if you're in the oil field, or if you're in the city offices, like whatever organization you're in, 60% of employees say their managers don't provide frequent enough recognition. 53% say their work is never recognized. They feel like they're never recognized. I'm putting that in quotes because back to our first question, who knows that I'm for them is a different question than who am I for? Because I can be for you and think that I'm I'm sending out customer recognition, or I'm posting on social media what a great job you did. You got employee of the week or employee of the month, or here's the whatever things that you get with that. But if the praise that I give you is public, but that's where you hear it first and you don't ever hear it privately, then that's an interesting thing, and that will set us up to have more of these kind of engagements, these perceptions, because it's very possible that a leader, a supervisor can say, well, I recognize people all the time. And your eyebrow, like, what the heck? What's going on? But the person on the other end doesn't feel valued and recognized. And so then do we have like this, emotional tug of war and see who's right? And well, I'm going to make a case. I've recognized you 3 times in the past 48 months. I mean, that's not the battle you want to fight, especially when we know it's such a big deal to provide this recognition, not necessarily just for us on the giving end, but for everyone on the receiving end. This is a great wake-up call for us. And one of my jobs, with our team, when we partner with organizations and we go in and do sessions, one of our jobs is to keep the locker room from becoming toxic. Another job is to remove the blind spots from people. And that's one of the things I hope that happens today with this video, is just because I think that I'm communicating well, or I think that I'm providing some props or some attaboys or attagirls or however we do that in your organization, that doesn't mean that they feel valued. That doesn't mean that those things we're sending out land, right? So instead of speaking my own language to you, I want to learn how to speak your language to you. So a question might be, so what are some things that would help you feel valued? We ask that question during sessions a lot. What are some things that you think would boost morale? People invariably say employee of the month, staff lunch, team recognition, brag book. Like, there's all kinds of different things, different ways that you can do it. And you might look at it for yourself and say, man, that's not something that I naturally do. It's okay. You don't have to necessarily be the one to do it, but you are the one who needs to make sure that it gets done, because Leadership 101, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And the more often that we reward great behavior, we reward the behavior we want to see again and again and again, the more often that. I'm not saying we should totally abandon customer satisfaction at all. I'm just saying that we need to, it's not a switch that you flip, right? It's a dial that you turn up. It's a dial that you turn up. And what if there was a way where you could focus on your customers, focus on your leadership team, and focus on your employees and team members all at the same time? Like, if there was such a thing, would you be interested in that? I mean, I would, for sure. I definitely want to keep my potential customers and clients happy, and got to keep my leadership team happy. If not, then I'm the only one doing the work. If you don't keep your leadership team happy, focused, engaged, then your job just gets exponentially more difficult. So there are ways we can do that. And really, one of the big things we can do, this goes all the way back to our definition of culture. And culture is simply the way we do what we do and the way we allow it to be done. The way we do what we do and the way we allow it to be done. And when we develop this culture, we cultivate this culture of intentional encouragement, of recognition, of looking for ways to try to celebrate people, instead of ways to criticize them, we get an entirely different culture. And that's one of the things that we really need to focus on. Because the truth is, in every organization, there are 3 things that you'll find: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Every time, friction, confusion, and underperformance. Hey, Mike, even on the teams that you lead? For sure on the teams that I lead. You'll find friction, confusion, and underperformance. You know why? Because we're humans. Hey, Mike, even on the teams where you're not leading, but you're part of the team? Friction, confusion, and underperformance. And what do we do with all that? Well, the result of how we handle that depends on our leadership. If there's friction that we just kind of sweep under the rug, or we kind of look the other way on, it's not going to go away. When we have that friction, it's just going to get more fierce and more fierce. And not only that, but then it filters through the locker room. Hey, did you hear that there's this Mike, Tyler's over here producing everything for us today. Man, he's doing a fantastic job. I'm going to look away from you and look to him. Man, Tyler, I really do appreciate what you're doing. And you and me and God and everybody else knows this doesn't happen without you. So I really, man, I really do appreciate you doing that. That's not something I just said because he's in the room and because we're talking about encouragement and appreciation, right? That's part of what I want the culture to be for our team and for our organization. And you have been in some of those situations where that wasn't the culture. Instead of trying to lift each other up, we're just trying to pull people down. We're trying to tear each other down. Man, that's an entirely different thing, and it's really difficult to overcome. Instead of we can all win together, it's a hey, I got to get more sales than you, got to get a higher customer service rating than you. And so instead of being teammates, now we're being maybe coworkers at best, but then now we're looking to see how I can make what I do look better than what you do as a teammate. So we've got to be able to handle the friction and the confusion and the underperformance well. And the easiest one I think is to fix in all of that is the confusion. A lot of times as leaders, we create confusion. It's almost like we breed it. It's not on purpose or not intentional, but it just happens. And there are two things we can do to fix that. One, be clear. Two, be consistent. So if you want to fix the confusion in your organization, like you could start doing that right now by trying to be clear and be consistent. And even if you're the middle manager, like if it's not all the way up to you, you've got some expectations you've got to meet, right? And then you've also got to manage expectations for your team, right? That's part of the deal. In the area of confusion, you can start by turning the dial up on that today. Be clear, be consistent. And when something is not clear or it's not consistent to you, don't just be silent. Hey, what do you want me to do about that? What am I supposed to do? I'm just not sure on what you want me to do. You can say that in a very respectful way. You could also say it in a way that'll get you fired on the spot. So be careful, be wise with that, right? But if the goal is to seek clarity so it can be consistent, man, that's admirable. The friction, that's going to be something we'll have to deal with. The underperformance, again, something we need to deal with. But one of the ways we can do right now is we can try to be clear and be consistent. And you know this from your perspective as the person being supervised or the person being led. Sometimes people have tried to hold you accountable for expectations that weren't clearly set in the first place. And that's a recipe for friction. That's a disaster waiting to happen because there's also not a whole lot of trust built into that environment. Peter Drucker has a great quote. It says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Everybody's got a good plan. Everybody's got a good strategy, 3 points. And this point, we got a social media calendar and we got all this stuff that's going to happen. You can have a great strategy, but the culture that you have, that you've cultivated, remember, culture is the way that we do what we do and the way we allow it to be done. That culture is going to eat the strategy that you have for breakfast every single day. A lot of times, we ask we get hung up on problems and we point fingers at people or we blame problems or systems or whatever. Problems should be solved, but people should be valued. Problems should always be solved and people should always be valued. I don't know if you can hear this right now, but the trash truck is getting emptied right outside our studio here. And I can be really ticked off at the trash can man who's doing his job, but it's interfering with my video right now. Or I can say, man, maybe I should have gotten the schedule. And then, hey, Mike, don't try to shoot a video right outside the door from the trash. I can get mad very easily, but what's the point of that? And that's actually also not going to fix the issue. I can get mad at the person who's causing the friction or who, in my perspective, is causing the friction, but that's not going to solve the friction. That's just going to put a little gas on the fire, right? Problems should be solved, but people should always be valued. Well, okay, Mike, but we still got these problems. So whether it's a people problem or a system problem or a process problem or whatever, it's still a problem that needs to be solved. Yeah, sure. But when we take the blame off of a person, the trash man, when we take the blame off of the person and just say, we need a better system. Well, now we can invite that person to be part of the solution instead of making them the entire problem. Problems should be solved. People should be valued. And you can ask this question, is the problem your team is experiencing right now, is this problem you're experiencing, is it a people problem or is it a system problem? Now, before you jump in and say people, because that's what we do, because we like to have somebody to blame, right? We don't just like, if it's, well, it's nobody's fault. Listen, most of the time, our default answer isn't, well, it's nobody's fault. It just happened. Most of the time, the default is, it was somebody's fault. I'm going to tell you whose fault it was. That's not the culture you want to create. It's not the culture that you want to cultivate. Cultivate's a farming term. It means control what you can control, and you can't control that. There are problems that happen all the time. So what we want to do is we want to get better at cultivating this culture that sees the problem, how it can be best solved with the system or with a process, and not just pulling people under the bus or throwing them under the bus. Andy Stanley's got a great quote about this, and he says, 80% of the problems in the workplace are system problems. And man, I would agree with that. Most of the time, it's not the people. Are sometimes people jerks? Yep. Sometimes they don't get enough sleep, or they have too much fun on the weekend or last night or whatever. I mean, there are lots of different things. Sometimes do they find out that their spouse has cancer? And so maybe their focus is a little bit off. It's a little bit different. Sometimes they've got issues at home with family. They've got a kid who's gone to college and they're doing some things that some college kids do and makes it tough to focus on their job. Hey, there's an infinite number of different problems that people could have at home that could impact the work that they do, for sure. So are we making it worse or making it better by pushing the blame of the project on them, the failed project or the mess ups of the project? We're not doing anyone any favors. So we want to remember problems should be solved. People should be valued. Have you ever felt like you were the cause of the problem? Yeah, sure. And were you actually the cause of the problem? If you're like me, you've been the cause of some of the problems. But the best environments, the best leaders and supervisors that I had, they're kind of like the Little League baseball coach, right? Hey, after I strike out 4 times in a row, for the love, I don't need anybody to tell me to choke up on the bat. Yeah, I know, choke up on the bat. I got that. I need somebody who knows me. I need my third base coach to come put their arm around me and walk me up the third baseline. Say, hey, Mike, man, you can do this. I know you can do this. I've seen you do this time and time and time again. You're not defined by your most recent mistake or failure. Do we all make them? Sure we do. But that doesn't mean that has to be our legacy. Problems should be solved. People should be valued. If you're getting any value out of this video today, man, I would love to invite you to subscribe to our channel. Over the last month of views that we've had, 75% of the views that we have are from people who haven't yet subscribed to our channel. So we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. We'd also love for you to like this video and share it. Maybe there's someone who does an exceptionally good job at your office of helping you feel valued, helping bring out the best in folks. We'd love for you to share that with them and invite them to subscribe too. That's what we would like. So question number 1. How do I know which area to focus on improving my leadership first or next? How do I know which area to focus on improving my leadership first or next? That's a great question. I'm gonna answer your question by asking a question. Where do you want to go? What are your goals and your dreams? What would a person who achieves those goals and dreams, what would they do? What would they actively pursue? Another book that's over my shoulder is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he has this great quote in there. Every action you take is a vote for the person you're becoming. Man, that's huge. Take that back to your question. Where do you want to go? What do you need to focus on first? Well, the question is, where do you want to go? Like, you could read a whole bunch of books. You could go learn the skill of sanding. Get yourself a new sander or some sandpaper, and you want to go start building wooden things. Great. But if you don't want to start building wooden things, don't go buy a book on how to utilize sandpaper. Like, a lot of times we don't improve because we're not really sure what we're trying to get better at. We just don't want to stay the same. And I think that's a big deal for a lot of us. We just don't want to stay the same, but we're not sure what our next step is to take. Well, I think your goal can always be to go back to yourself and always strive to become the leader that you would follow. There are times when I look back in my life and I'm like, man, I don't know why people would have followed me at that point because I didn't really know what I wanted to do and I wasn't sure how to do it. Now, this is the second greatest work of my life so far, next to being Gina's husband and Rayleigh Jackson and Jacob's daddy. I mean, I have a lot to offer, and I want to continue to grow in my leadership and be the type of person that Mike Conn wants to follow. Another question. How do I lead when I'm not the one in charge? Hey, that's a great question because you can't bully your way around. Like you can't just say because I said so. You on the job description at the end of it where it says and other duties assigned by the supervisor or the leader or the manager. Like you don't always get to be that person. So the question is, how do I lead when I'm not the one in charge? Well, the first thing is be consistent. Be someone that everyone can depend on. Be consistent. Be available. Don't like where I need Mike to do something, but I don't know where he is. I can never find Mike when I need him. Like again, conference room at home in the living room. Like, is there someone in your house, like, or maybe it was you when you were growing up, like whenever laundry needed to be folded, like, I don't know where he is. Or dishes need to be done. I don't know, probably in the bathroom. Check the bathroom. Like there's always sometimes when you need people to be there, sometimes you can't find them. And those are the kind of things that will stick in the mind of the leaders and the supervisors and the managers and the bosses and the owners and the founders. Like, who can I depend on? You want me to be known by someone that you know who's for you? Okay, can I depend on you? Because that's a big thing. So you want to be consistent doing what you're supposed to be doing. You want to be available, be dependable. And then you got to be coachable because nobody gets it right all the time. The reason why we call this the people lab, because in a lab, nobody expects it to be perfect every time. Like nobody expects it to be perfect anytime, but we're always turning up the dial to try to get a little bit better version of our products, a little bit better version of our services, a little bit better version of what we're trying to do. In order to do that, we've got to be coachable. That's a big thing, right? And then I would also ask this question a lot. Whenever you're not the one in charge, I would ask this question a ton. Am I being curious or am I being critical? Am I being curious or am I being critical? Because I don't default to being curious. I default to being critical, especially if it's something that I do or have done before or I think that I know how to do. If it's a job that I've already done, man, I would love to tell you that I'm more curious, but I'm probably more critical. Not probably. I catch myself being more critical. One of the great questions that has helped me clarify my leadership and become a better leader and a better follower is by asking this question. Am I being curious or am I being critical? And always err on the side of being curious. Even if you're right, even if you know you're right, you can still be right and not say it in a way that brings more damage to the organization. Now, I can't just leave it there because sometimes you know something is wrong. Some people are doing wrong activity. It's illegal, unethical, whatever. I'm not saying you should be silent then, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying find a tactical way, a good way, an honorable way to be critical. And one of the ways you can do that is by being curious. So I know that, this is it's a tax thing or whatever. Like it's something that's not ethical. It's not legal. I'm just wondering, how do we do that? Like that doesn't fit in our mission statement, our core values. That doesn't fit with our key characteristics or our 3 critical actions. I'm just curious, how can we do this and feel good about it? And then stop talking, right? Your job is not to be the judge and the jury, but when you're unclear about something, I would encourage you to err on the side of being curious, not just being critical. And if you need another opinion, don't get someone else who can't do anything about it. I mean, if it's something you have to be critical of, something that's just wrong, I would get an opinion of someone outside the organization. So it's not you're trying to stir up the pot in the locker room, right? You're going from one person to the next and say, hey, did you hear what we're doing now? I mean, apparently this is okay. No. That's not going to help the locker room. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help the organization. But I'm also not saying you should turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to it either. Especially when we're talking about encouragement, we're talking about feedback. Listen, there's this 3-to-1 feedback ratio that I think, I used to think it was it's pie in the sky. For every one thing wrong, you want me to tell you 3 things you're doing well? Like, do this in a coaching session? I'm like, man, that's not realistic. And then I heard these stats. 3-to-1 doesn't even get you back to neutral. It's 5-to-1 to get you to neutral. 7-to-1 to get positive feedback. So again, this works in the conference room, right? It works at work. So if you're a supervisor and you point out 2 things that are wrong, that weren't done correctly, then 2 times 3, a 3-to-1 ratio, then that means you've got to give 6 things that are doing right. If you've got 5 things that are wrong, a little quick math, 5 times 3 is 15. That means you've got to really start looking for ways that people are doing well, or you've got to find ways to be less critical. Okay, now take it from the conference room at home to the living room. As a parent or guardian, when your kid comes home from doing the extracurricular activities or with a report card or making new friends or whatever, like is your feedback to them, hey, well, you need to do this better. Strike out at the game. You got to put your glove down so the ball can't go in, like whatever it is, basketball, football, like checkers, chess, dance, like a tap dance. If you're going to be critical of dancing, critical of singing, for every one thing that you say, if you just want it to be neutral, you've got to say 5 things that are good. And if you want it to be positive, it's got to be a 7-to-1 ratio. That might be disturbing for you because you're thinking back, you're replaying back in your mind ways that you haven't been as encouraging. I don't want this to be judgmental, right? I want this to be removing your blind spots. This is the chance where you can say, okay, now I know I've got to do better. Okay, I can do better. And then you turn down the dial of being critical, right? And you turn up the dial of encouragement. You can absolutely do that. I would recommend that you invest 600 seconds, 10 minutes, reflecting on what was good about today, and then setting yourself up to get in the right frame of mind for tomorrow. And maybe it's your first 10 minutes that you're up out of bed. I don't know what your schedule is. I don't know everything that you're doing, but to build time before you leave the house to persuade yourself to be encouraging and be less critical. Are you kidding me right now? Do I have to do it? No, you don't have to. Free country, right? You can do what you want. Just remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And if I'm gruff or if I'm angry or if I'm frustrated, angry eyebrows, finger in your face all the time, that's what people receive from me. That's what they're going to go out and disseminate from me on my behalf to everyone else. That's the way the middle manager is going to talk down to the employees or to the team members. That's the way the older brother is going to talk to a younger brother or younger sister. It's the same thing. What gets rewarded gets repeated. So what we've got to do is we've really got to be intentional at work and at home, and your professional life and your personal life. It's not easy, but you absolutely can do it. You just need to decide that you're going to do it. I've got one more question here for us today. All right. The question is, how do you lead someone who doesn't want to be led? A little audience participation, wherever you are when you're watching this video. When I do this, I want you to say the word that you think I want you to say, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? You can give a man a brain, but you can't make him think. That's more than just lyrics to one of my favorite rap songs. It's truth. Like, you can't make people do something that they don't want to do. Can you just fire them? Is that what you want to be? Like, you want to be known as the people who hire folks so they can also fire folks? I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm saying these are questions you've got to think about for yourself. The truth is, life is 10% what happens to us, and then 90% the way we react or respond. And for me, the differential between react and respond is Most of the time when I react, it's a knee-jerk reaction. There's a reason it's called a knee-jerk reaction. Is if I just react on the spot, on the fly, sometimes I'll say things I couldn't unsay. I'll do things that we can't undo. I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier today who, at his job, instead of saying something he couldn't unsay, he knew it was time for a break. Taking lunch, be back later. Because he was so frustrated with what was happening, what was going on. And instead of engaging and then saying something he possibly would regret and certainly couldn't unsay or couldn't undo, he had the wisdom and the self-control to say, hey, you know what? I will be back, but first I'm going to be gone. like you've got to be clear and be consistent. So if it's someone who you're trying to lead, but they don't want to be led, all you can do is the most you can do. And you're not in charge of that. You can't want something for someone so badly it changes their behavior. They've got to have some skin in the game. They've got to have some emotions in the game. They got to have their heart in the game. That doesn't mean that when you say jump and they don't say how high, you just write them off. That is leadership, right? Like that's the charge for us as leaders. We're not order givers. We're not barkers. We're leaders. And so the best way to lead someone where you want them to go is by showing them why you want them to go there. Not just telling them, I mean, yes, sure. But remember, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so I can give you the strategy, but if you don't want to do it, and you've been able to get away with not wanting to do it, or everyone else clocks in at a certain time, but if you're 5 minutes late, just kind of look the other way. Well, yeah, it's going to be much more difficult to inspire someone to change. But that starts with you. We're really quick to point the finger at someone else instead of saying, man, where do I need to get better? And one of the ways we need to get better is we need to understand ourselves. We need to be more aware of ourselves and how we would respond. But we also need to be aware for the people who we're leading and who we're coaching and who we're supervising and who we're responsible for at home and at work, right? You can absolutely do it. It's going to take some more intentionality, especially the 3-to-1 ratio, 5-to-1, 7-to-1. All that stuff doesn't come naturally to a lot of us. It doesn't actually come naturally to me. I'm more critical by nature. So that means I've got to put some guardrails up in my life. I'm trying to put the cruise control in, right? Trying to stay out of the ditch, trying to keep from getting a speeding ticket, all that sort of stuff. That's a big part of what we do at the People Lab is in trying to help solve division and disunity in the workplace. As we're trying to do that, we're also trying to become better people, better humans, better leaders. And we're trying to help our partners become better as well. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. And hopefully with our conversation today with leadership and supervision, there's been something that's been helpful to you. We would love to connect with you. And what I'd love for you to do before I give you the phone number to text and all that stuff, hey, I want to invite you one more time. If you got any value in this video, I would love for you to subscribe to our channel, our YouTube channel. That's where a lot of our content is going to be coming from. We'd also love for you to like it and then to share it with someone who you think is doing a good job. Like I don't mean to send them the link and say, hey, you should read up on this. Like you probably need to watch this one twice. Like I don't mean to do that. Just it's a way that you can engage some other folks and invite them to join the conversation. And we really would love to connect with you. And one of the best ways you can do that is to send us a text message at 580-952-9229. You can text us anytime, or you can send me an email at mike@mikeconcoaching.com. That's mike@mikeconcoaching.com. Thank you guys so much for investing some time with us today. Can't wait to see you next time. Have a good day.